Hello everyone, this is Mohammed from Python Ninja YouTube channel, and today we will learn together how can we use arbitrary arguments in functions in Python. So arbitrary arguments refer to the situation where a large number of arguments or function parameters are passing to the function. So for example, when we design a function, we limit the positional or keyword arguments to match the number of the parameters we identify when we build the function. But suppose that we want to add another arguments, okay, more than the identified parameters or arguments when we design the functions. Okay, so we have to use the arbitrary arguments. Since sometimes we don't know how many arguments we will pass in the future to the function when we recall or invoke this function. When we design a function, we use two reserved statements or reserved words, which are args and kwargs. Args should be started with asterisk or star, and kwargs should be started with double stars or double asterisks. Well, for args, it allows us to pass multiple positional arguments, and when we unpack these args, it will return a tuple. And for kwargs, it allows us to pass multiple keyword arguments. And when we unpack this kwargs, it returns a dictionary, so we can loop among the keys and value of this dictionaries. Okay, so usually when we want to unpack a tuple, we use the star or asterisk. And let us start coding. And for example, before using args or kwargs, let us define this like a light function that will add numbers together. Okay, so suppose I have a and b, and I want to add both together, so this function will return to me the summation of a and b. Okay, and when I recall this function, I want to print this function. When I recall it, I have to enter 10, I have to enter 20. Okay, so I can run this function, and the 10 and the 20, the summation is 30. Okay, this is like a normal function for this, the summation, for summing or adding up two arguments, okay, or two values of corresponding the corresponding function parameters. But what if I want to add another numbers? Okay, for example, I want to add 40, then I will have another problem, because here only we identify two positional arguments, which are here. Okay, here is the corresponding values of these parameters or arguments. So because we have two, we only allow to like submit two values. Okay, so the solution is to use args and kwargs for the keyword arguments. Now, instead of using this a and b, I use star and I use args. Okay, so I use star and args, because when I unpack these args, it will give me a tuple. I can loop through the tuple. So for example, I want to print first the type of this args. Okay, the type will be tuple. Okay, then I identify here total parameter, which will be 0, and I loop for arg in args in args. Okay, what I can do, I can use augmented assignment operator, okay, to sum up all of these values, and I finally return the total. Okay, so again, instead of using here number of parameters or functions parameters, okay, I use only star args unpack the infinite number of parameters or arguments, positional arguments. Okay, for that, I can loop among these positional arguments, which are located, or when we unpack this, it is located into a tuple. So I can loop here inside this tuple. But when I do this for loop, I remember that I remove this asterisk and I do the operation. Now let us test our function. Okay, I want to add 10 and 20 and the result is 30. Okay, so the class is tuple here because I printed the type. The type of this args, as I said, tuple, but for kwargs it will be a dictionary. Okay, so I did what I followed the former or the previous function to add 10 and 20. But what if I want to add another number? It will be added. If I add another numbers to infinity, all of these numbers, it will be added. Okay, if I remove all of these positional arguments, the function will return no error. It will return 0. So this is the beauty of this arbitrary arguments. So it allows me to use as many positional arguments as I can, or even I omit all of these positional arguments. Okay, but when I use them under the args or under the arbitrary arguments. Okay, the good thing is that I can, for example, modify this args. I can give it like a special name to match the application. So instead of using args as a fuzzy name, I can say, for example, nums. Okay, and I have to modify all of these to nums, and nums will still valid. Okay, so don't restrict yourself to use args. Okay, or kwargs. You can give any name, but remember how you will recall these values. Okay, so we introduced the concept of arbitrary argument in the context of positional arguments, where I can use a star to unpack the arguments. These arguments are unpacked into a tuple. Okay, and I can loop to this tuple. I can give a different name than the default Pythonic name, which args. I can give name. I can give any numbers. I can give any name for this reserve word, and I will still have the same. Okay, so also this args or the arbitrary positional argument can be used for string, not only for numbers. For example, let's define my full name function, and I will give args here. Okay, and what I will do, I will loop for arg in args. Okay, so args here will be a string representation. Okay, I want to, for example, print this arg. Okay, and I want to use this keyword default argument just to prevent going to a new line. So I can recall this full name, and I can submit my first name. Okay, and my last name. Okay, like this, and I can execute this. Okay, so suppose in the future someone asks me to submit my middle name, I can submit my middle name like a dot. Okay, suppose also in the future someone asks to extend my middle name, I can extend it easily because of the arbitrary positional arguments which come from star args I can pass infinite number of positional arguments, and these arguments can be numbers. I can do operation to these numbers, or it could be a string. So I loop here through a string, and I printed my name here. Okay, let us speak about or introduce the keyword arbitrary keyword arguments. Okay, so far so good. We have the positional arbitrary arguments, and when we add back these arguments, it will return a tuple. Okay, so let us define, for example, a phone, like this function called phone number. Okay, organizer, and what I want to inside this function instead, I want to use equals. Okay, so let us print the type of this equals, and it will be a dictionary. Because it's a dictionary, I can loop it through the keys and value. Okay, for key and value in kwargs dot items. Okay, what I have to do, I want to print keys and values, and I want to print this key. Then I use this column, and I want to print the values, and the in will be in the string because I want to print them in the same line. So suppose my phone number organizer will be like this. Remember, here we use keyword arguments. It's like arbitrary keywords arguments. So when I recall them inside the function, I have to give name, okay, to the argument. So I didn't define them here, but I can define them at the time when we recall the function. For example, I want to use the country code, and the country code, because Python prevent using zero at the beginning. So what I can do, I can use zero padding. So I can use zero padding in form of format specifier. Please go back to the format specifier and check why I use 02 here, just to add 00 at the beginning. In Python we cannot like print them easily, especially if we use integer. Okay, so I add 00 here. Then suppose this is the country code, suppose this is the area code, okay, and this area code, for example, will be like this. Suppose I have also first digit and first digits, and these first digits will be like this, and I have last digit. Suppose the phone number like organized in this case. This is like random, but suppose it is organized in this case. So we can organize our code. We can add also as many as we want of these keyword arguments. So the class here dictionary, because I printed the type, and here I have the country code, which will be like 0095. Then I have the area code, I have the last digit code. So with arbitrary keywords arguments, it allows me to add as many as I want keyword arguments when I recall the function. And even I can add more. For example, if I can add region, for example, it will be EU. Okay, so it will be a. So by using arbitrary arguments, we can extend the number of positional arguments when I use star args, or the number of the keywords arguments when I use kwargs. Okay, now we can use the same arbitrary positional and keyword arguments in the same functions. For example, suppose I have dummy function. This is like dummy. It doesn't make any thing, just to loop and different. So first of all, I have A and B. This is our positional normal arguments. Then I have star args. Okay, this is like positional. This is a positional arbitrary arguments, and I have keyword arbitrary arguments or kwargs. Okay, because A and B are positional arguments, I can print them A and B directly. Now, because args is a tuple, I can loop into it. So for arg and args, okay, I can print also arg. Okay, now because kwargs is a dictionary, I can loop. Okay, I can loop through the key and value of this dictionary in kwargs.items. Okay, then I can print, okay, the key and the corresponding values. Okay, so I bring the key and value here. So I can call dummy, and I want to, for example, send integer values here 30, 40, 50. Well, A and B are positional arguments. These are mandatory to be inserted. Then I have, after the first two, I have these three which are associated to positional arbitrary arguments. Then I have the kwargs. How can I identify the kwargs, which are keyword arguments? This should have a name. Okay, so I have a name of the arguments. In this one, for example, I can give my name, and later I can give my age. Okay, so we can use the age in form of integers. Okay, remember one thing, because we have two positional arguments, these are mandatory to be inserted. Okay, whatever reminder of the arbitrary arguments like args or kwargs doesn't matter. Let us execute this. Okay, so I have 10, 20. Okay, printed together. These are positional arguments. Then we have for loop here. Okay, and equal just this one. Then we have for loop to loop through this args, and we have tuple. Okay, then we have to introduce another print here just to make a difference. Okay, and end here like this. So we looped through args and printed from 30 to 50. Okay, 30 to 50. Okay, and we have this like this. Okay, we have 30 to 50. These are coming from args, and from kwargs, anyone with name like or not this name, but anyone has name like name and age, and this is printed under the keywords arguments. The positional arguments are mandatory to be inserted. What does that mean? That means if I omitted all of these arguments, this arbitrary argument, I don't need them, I can execute the function without any problem. So as I said, args and kwargs like can be utilized or can be omitted. Okay, doesn't matter, doesn't have a problem. If I use them, I don't use them. So in case I use them because I don't know in the future, for example, if I will add more arguments, arbitrary or keywords or not. But if I want to use, for example, only arbitrary arguments like this, arbitrary positional arguments, I can use. If I will omit, okay, all of the so here I use the first two related to the positional arguments and the last two related to this one, okay, which are arbitrary argument. If I omitted all of these and only using the keyword argument like name equal Muhammad, then we will have a problem because the first two are positional and these are mandatory. Okay, and please read this error and understand that the both positional arguments are important. These are positional. We introduced them at the first tutorial of functions, and these are positional but arbitrary arguments. Okay, so I can use, for example, these positional arguments. Okay, A and B, and I can omit or don't use this, and then later use the keyword argument. That okay, fine, no problem in the execution. To close this tutorial, okay, I have to also introduce where we can enforce some arguments to be keyword arguments. Okay, let us introduce this function, the same function. I have dummy function. It's nothing, just like name. For example, if I use args here, then I use name, and later I use age. Okay, in this form, okay, what exists after the arbitrary positional argument args must be treated as keyword arguments. Remember this. If I have args, what exists afterward of parameters will be treated as a keyword argument. Okay, so for example, here I can look for arg in args. Okay, I want to print arg. Okay, and later I want to print the name and the age. Print. Okay. Okay, here I want to print name and I want to print age. Okay, let us execute this dummy. I want to, for example, consider name here, and later I want to consider family name. So these are related to args. Okay, why related to args? Because what exists after them should be keyword arguments, which identified by the name of the parameters and the value. Okay, which be like this: name equal. Sorry, I do not need to use name. I do not to. I will use job just because I already use name, and I want to use job. So I have here job. For example, engineer, and I also have the age here. Okay, equal 30. Okay, so if I remove this keyword tags, then I will have a problem because I missed two keywords arguments. So in some situations we enforce, okay, the arguments that fall after the arbitrary positional arguments star args to be keyword arguments, and this is rule to have what exists after the args star args to be keywords arguments, meaning that when I invoke or recall the function I have to put their name, okay, or like associate their name in the function. And that's for today's tutorial. See you next tutorial where we want to introduce like parameters packing and unpacking